I had a lot of special moments with Israel. He's the first one ever to call me at 2:30 in the morning, sobbing uncontrollably, thanking me for what I had done for his life. I was sobbing after 30 seconds, going, "No, but it's your music that they want, it's not me." And obviously, it shows in his music. He played ukulele very simply, and he sang, but yet it speaks right to your heart when Israel sings to you now. I always tell an artist that it's basically 80% attitude and about 10% aptitude, and then about 10% magic. Just timing, things have to be just right. When I came back from college, a hui of men, one generation above me, pulled me in to their group. It was 5 very known, powerful business people. That part of my life I call my formal education. They were the ones that actually helped me apply all this knowledge I got in school and apply it to real life. I just loved all the things to do with art. I had built a small room that I called Jon de Mello Gallery, which was like a theater, and it had music in it, again, the multimedia thing. And talking about low tech, I had 4 garage door motors that I bought from Sears in the ceiling, and those clickers. Very slowly, I'd turn the room dark, and there'd be music playing, and I'd push one of the things, and the paintings would come down in the dark. And then I'd push another light, and the light would project a square light on the painting, and dimly it would come up, and people would gasp. People were amazed at that. Before I was 30, I was giving lots back to the community. Somebody needed a concert, somebody needed entertainment, somebody needed a stage design, somebody had a silent auction and they wanted something. I would give some of my paintings away. I would give some music away. We learned from each other much more than we learned in school. We learned by living and by example, and it's a very important thing.
Greater Good Radio. Connect, learn, heal, and grow. This Greater Good archive video is brought to you by Brain Gain Hawaii, a boutique executive recruiting, career development, and coaching firm. Learn more at braingainhi.com.
You know that sweet indigenous fruit of the islands? The mountain apple changed this man's life when it plopped onto his tin roof while trying to put together a business idea, the Mountain Apple Company. Billboard magazine wrote that it's the strongest independent recording company in the history. 3 out of 5 nominees for the 2005 Grammys were represented by the Mountain Apple Company. Today on Greater Good TV, we have CEO and founder of the Mountain Apple Company, Jon de Mello.
Are you sure you have the right guys?
Welcome to our show, Jon.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know, your company does distribution, publishing, licensing, talent management. What do you focus on? I mean, there's so many realms of your company.
The creative part of it is the depth for me. Now, management is kind of babysitting. That's just keeping the calendar and making sure someone puts their clothes on and gets to a location. So I stay kind of distant from that. I'm in the promotion of it. I'm in the development of it. I'm in the production of it, the creative side of it. I'm taking a raw talent, taking something and making something out of nothing, so to speak.
So if you take a look at what you're doing in terms of distribution and producing music, there are other labels and companies in the market that do that. And how come you folks are number one?
Because we have the same attitude you have. I'm just aggressive, and you two are aggressive too. I just don't sit well. I love to go after more and more. I want to do a better job at it tomorrow than I did yesterday. It's a world community now with the internet. It's wide open, and our Hawaiian culture is getting very far into the universe at this point with all our communication skills.
Do you think that the success has to do with your unique style, though? Because I did read that you try to incorporate the artists into the production of creating their cases or the music and things like that.
That's correct. The first thing I normally talk to an artist about, and it goes through several interview processes before I actually decide or we connect as a group that's going to make something. And one of my first questions is, I will adapt to the way you work, because I've worked in every which way there is. I mean, you know, some people come in, they write lyrics only, no music. Some people write everything. Some people do music, no lyrics. Some people like to record all at once, sometimes overdubbing. And I say, that's not important. Whatever you do, I will adapt to your method of creation. So it is kind of unique in that. And one of my favorite tricks is I like to be in the recording room right in front of the player. and sitting in a chair. It sometimes makes them nervous in the beginning, but then it's like a comfort zone because then we have contact and we can feel each other's energy as we're making music or making something happen.
But isn't that exhausting on your time if you're always in the recording studio?
Yes. And normally recording studios don't have windows, and so you're sort of, you have no idea unless there's a clock in front of you, and I try not to ever have a real clock in front of anyone. It's exhausting, but it's also hunting for something. And once you find the creative juice and the right formulas, time flies. You have no idea how much time you spend in there. And sometimes it's a day and a half. I didn't even know it.
So how much of this is skill and then how much of it is passion?
Skill comes from doing it for a long time, a lot of different ways.
But you're kind of gifted, right? I mean, not everyone can do music.
Not everybody can do music or connect the dots, as I call it, music and the art. It's a total art form. It's not just notes, music, and singing a song. It's presentation. It's how the singer looks, what that singer, male or female, projects, the charisma part of it all. So that is a big part of the whole equation. I always tell an artist that it's basically, 80% attitude and about 10% aptitude, the ability to do it, and then about 10% magic, just timing. Things have to be just right and everything. But in so many cases that I come up against, it's somebody that has an attitude, that has a will to do something. And they're stronger than that, than sometimes their craft, their music. But they'll still win if they continually focus and move towards their goal, which is their attitude. I want to do this. That's the most important thing I look into an artist and find.
So it seems like you coached these artists, but over the past few decades, what have you done to coach yourself to get to the level you're at today?
It's funny because, it's an equal exchange. And for students, it's a very interesting process going to school. And when I went to school, I learned as much from my fellow students than my professors, probably much more actually. And watching my age, devour what is being given to us in teachings and lessons and experience, and watching how other people are feeling and accepting it and applying it to life, because in an environment there will be 100 people and 80 of those are like the elite, most powerful, creative, they have talent, they have unbelievable things there, but lesser of that 80, the 4 or 5 that aren't in that 80 have a much stronger attitude of accomplishing and applying this to their life. And I found sometimes that people that really aren't quite as talented as the person next door have made it even stronger because of their attitude and wanting to do something.
So Mountain Apple Company is a business, obviously. It's a thriving business. You're an artist. Typically, for artists, they're not necessarily known for their business skills.
Right.
How do you bridge that gap?
I was sort of born into that. My father and some of his associates were definitely left and right brain people in different areas. I love corporate juggling game. Okay?
So is it born or made?
It was sort of born. I think it's DNA. My father was this way too. And I love both sides of my brain. I like the fact that I can make something, but I want very much to get that something out my door for other people to see it. So the two sides of your brain come into play when that kind of situation happens.
And did it also have a lot to do with growing up in the environment? Because your father was also in music of Polynesia. Right. He had his business. It was a really large business in Hawaii with music.
He also vice president of a very famous advertising agency. So he had both the commercial side of the mind and the creative side of the mind. And he merged the two very well.
And you went to a lot of these business meetings, right, when you were growing
Very
up?
much so. When I came back from college, I had all the papers I needed to be, an artiste or musician or whatever I wanted to do. And I came home, going, okay, what's next, okay? And what happened was a hui of men, one generation above me, pulled me in to their group. It was 5 business people, very known, powerful business people, and they taught me over a period of about 3 years. That part of my life I call my formal education. They were the ones that actually helped me apply all this knowledge I got in school and apply it to real life and make it palatable for people and such. There's a business community. We built a condominium in Salt Lake. We had 4 or 5 restaurants. We were very diversified in this big business hui. Some of these people have moved on into government work. They're a politician. One was a judge. One was a banker, and not just a banker, owned a bank. And it was a whole group of people that were very diversified, accountant, attorneys, all this kind of thing. And again, they were my father's age, a generation above me, but as a person that just came out of school from the West Coast, they pulled me right into the center of things, and they were open, and they showed me things that really, at 22 years old, you really, it was pretty private stuff to be able to be involved in.
Why? Why did they choose you?
I don't know. I knew them all my life, okay? They loved my father's work, and again, I had what I said earlier, which was an attitude towards I wanted to be successful. I wanted to do something, and I wanted to do it well. And I think they saw that in me and pulled me right into the center of things. I was doing anything. They made a scale model of a building, and they were trying to figure out how to show this. I said, hey, hold on. I got a camera that can come right in, and I can photograph this lanai like it'll look like it's a full-size lanai. It's a rendering. And so I did, and I, tinted it. I had my own dark room, and I tinted it and cleaned it up a little bit so it really looked like a building. And I brought it back the next day, and I brought back 10 8x10 photographs, and they go, that's fabulous. How did you do that? Your building's not built yet, but it was a model this big, and I just got in close and did it. And I just had a desire to do it. I just loved all the things to do with art.
When they put this group or hui together, was it to do real estate development, projects, things like that? Yes. And so that was a little different from art.
Yes.
But you also knew that you'd be developing your business skills?
Yes. Okay. There were accountants that took me under their wing, taught me how to count. I knew how to count already, but they were teaching me the real thing. There were tax people. There were all sorts of planning, and I was privy to all that. I got to see all this in the ground stages of different projects, okay? And it's all together. I mean, when you say artist, you think of a guy that has a ponytail and funny glasses and so on, but an artist is a nurse. An artist is a mother that has children. That's an art form in itself, okay? A man behind a taxi is an artist in a way, shape, or form. If he can get you 25 blocks in 10 minutes, that's an art form. I mean, even though his head's screaming, his horn's going, and everything's going, art is just what we do as an individual. And I think this hui saw that I was very interested in applying what I knew to life. And multimedia was what I was calling it in these early 60s. And multimedia was a slide carousel projector, an overhead projector, and if you were really high makamaka, you'd have a 16mm movie projector, but you never have any source film or anything like that. But that was the extent of multimedia, a slideshow with a wired remote control and a few things like that. Now look at us with flash and the internet and how the merging of high definition and the audio, the ways we can edit audio and things. It's amazing, the process of science.
Speaking of the technology, why do you stay so ahead of the newest things going on, being real tech savvy?
Because I don't do it. Because I truly believe that the best way to record a group is live, 5 guys in a room. Then I know the backup. I have all the science in my back pocket. I do study software. I know the software. I love the tech side. So I've followed the tech side all the way through. I had one of the first Apple IIs, okay, with a top that flipped open, it was ridiculously different to use than what we use now, I love the tech side. I'm always learning and reading up on new softwares and new events, especially when it has to do with audio and audio editing and things like that. But really, my main focus when I take 3 or 4 or 5 people into a room is I want those 4 or 5 people to look at each other and play the song at once, knowing that I can go back and doctor it with the science part of my life, okay? But I want to get that groove feeling of the music. I don't want to overdub each piece. Stat one place, another place, another place. It doesn't work musically.
What are you doing in the studio to get them to relax and kind of create that magic? It's like Kanikapila, they're just playing and you have that kind of soul and that essence. What can you do in the studio, or what can we do in our businesses to create that kind of ether?
I sneak record them. That's my trick, okay? Whenever you say, you ready, set, okay, push the red button, everybody goes, like this,
Kind of like the TV studio.
Kind of like the TV studio. And then all, okay? But yet, in the rehearsal, it was just fabulously fluid, beautifully perfect, with all the imperfections that make it perfect, okay? So when an artist comes into my studio, the recorder is on and they don't even know it. okay? And, you know, you tune up, work up, practice, try, you know, rehearse a little bit, see what happens.
Including
you know?
all the videotaping, right, that they don't know of. They can use for candid films after.
Absolutely, absolutely, you know. And a lot of time I have a high definition camera, I'm walking around shooting little stills and stuff, and I do that. As soon as they get into the room to get them relaxed into the environment, I dim the lights sometimes. Sometimes people want to sing in a very dimly lit room, you know. But most of the time, my recorder, my computers are in record, and I'm recording everything that's happening, all the conversations, all the tunings, everything. And out of that, sometimes we'll take a song 4 or 5 times. And in the end, the one I use is the rehearsal before I actually said, okay, let's record one, you know, because there is something psychological that it snaps out of you. Even with me, at home, on my piano with composition, and I've got it, it just feels good. Now I'm going to push the red button. As soon as I push the red button, I go, what'd I do? What happened?
It's almost like taking pictures, right?
Yeah, or it'll be stiff, okay, or it'll get more perfect and stiff. And I believe life is a balance of perfect and imperfection, and the beauty of imperfection really is what makes everything work, music. Now, when you look at a lead sheet of notes, that's exactly timed perfectly over. Nobody plays it that way. Everybody's lagging, they're moving ahead, they're moving backwards. That's why I like musicians to play together, because there's a waveform. One guy's speeding up, the other guy's hearing it, he's speeding up with them. That doesn't happen when you do it one at a time.
Is this style very different? Because, you know, I did hear of a lot of people that when they produce it, it's one instrument or one singer at a time. So the way you're doing it, is it unique?
It's the old way you used to do it. In the 60s, we'd go into an orchestra of 80 people and put sheet music in front of them, and we'd play the song and record it. Mono, that was it, okay? There was no tricks. We didn't have the science. So the old way of recording was everybody plays it once, we have no extra tracks, okay? But these are people who are Los Angeles or London or the London Philharmonic, Los Angeles, all that. You put music in front of them, they play it the first time. You're recording it the first time. We budgeted 23 minutes a song, and with an 80-piece orchestra and maybe a 35-piece choir, okay? And we'd run through the score once just to see if the copyist made any errors. And then the fiddle player would tap the thing, and I think this is a flat, not a, you know, or whatever, or this is supposed to be an A instead of a, you know. But we recorded, okay? And inside the recording booth behind the glass, there was a long console, and there was another man, my father was conducting, and there were 3 other people sitting behind these sliders and with a full orchestrated manuscript in front of them. And everybody was assigned 10 faders. And one guy would be spotting the score saying, okay, here comes the flute player, here comes the flute player, and you just push it up the level, okay, and his solo comes in, okay, out, 2, 3, 4, gone. And you're reading the score as it's actually being played, and you're following all of this, okay? It's harder work for the people in the engineering behind the glass than it is for the musicians. And musicians, they can't hear half the time. They don't hear what the rest of the orchestra is playing. They're just watching the conductor and they're staying with him because they have to baffle him and divide the sounds a little bit. So that's the kind of stuff. It feels better. The music feels better, especially if you take a rhythm section in together. People play music together. If we were all to have a pencil and we were tapping away and trying some rhythm, we would never hit the table at the same time with a rhythm. Okay, but yet your ear may decipher that it actually does happen that way, okay? But an orchestra doesn't play the same way. And people interreacting live is fabulous. That's why we go to concerts. We're watching people interreact, you know, and play music from across the room.
How much of that is gift, and how much of that can you actually work on? Because there's a certain level at that where it's someone who's world class is just world class, right?
Yes, but you know, when you say world class, it's probably he just has a lot more experience in doing it, you know. One of the biggest problems with our local performers and musicians now in Hawaii are there are no live locations to hone your skill down, okay? Now, the brothers Cazimero, we were in the Royal for 13 years doing 7 shows a week, you know, and after 13 years, you get it down, you know. And because of boredom, the 3 of us, Robert, Roland, and myself, we couldn't do 1 show for 13 years. In fact, we ended up doing 3 shows a year, different shows a year. And it would take a month or so of pre-production to get a new show mounted and then try it out in the audience. And by doing that, you just get good at it. You start going to the gym and lift a weight every day for 13 years. Then look at your arm and compare it with your other arm. This arm's going to be bigger, okay?
It takes 1 week to notice the difference.
It's a muscle, okay? And your mind's a muscle. And so a gift, yeah, you got to have a gift, you know? But it's half and half. You got to work on that gift too. And unfortunately, you know, there are 2 or 3 musicians in our Hawaiian world right now that could really use 4 years of solid gigging in a Waikiki showroom with a different audience every night. You really learn fast on what works and what doesn't work. You know, musically, talk-wise, communication skills, taking them through the history of Hawaii, you know, and all that. You learn quick by field work.
Speaking of the Brothers Cazimero, that was your first, I guess, band that you took or started the Mountain Apple Company with. What was that meeting like, and how old were you when you started with them?
I was about 23, I think, 24.
How old were they at that time?
They were about the same age,
Okay.
a year younger maybe, you know, and they had just come out of Sunday Manoa with Peter Moon, and humongous success, huge success, and started the Renaissance. Well, they didn't start it, but they really nailed it into place, the Renaissance of music, okay? And they were just out of a job, and I saw the opportunity, my father did too. I saw Sunday Manoa many, many times, and Peter is brilliant, okay? Peter Moon is brilliant on the ukulele and such, but he does not sing. And Robert and Roland were singing, and Roland was fabulous on the guitar, and Robert was incredible on the bass. Plus, Robert had the patter to carry the show, so it was just natural that those two and they're brothers, and you know, when you're brothers, you know, they're connected. I've told this story before, but so many times in concert, Robert will be playing bass and he'll stick his head around the back of the bass and say something to Roland and come right back. And everybody asks me, what are they doing? What are they doing? Just making a joke, talking? Robert's screaming out, B flat, because he knows the song he's playing isn't working. So on the next end of a phrase, he'll just suspend, Roland will hit a B flat and let it ring, and Roland really doesn't know what Robert's going to do, and he starts off in a vocal, and then Roland will follow that song, and he starts playing it, okay? So he just clips it along. So because there's 2 of them, and because they're brothers, and because they've done it since they were 8 years old with their mother and father's band, and such like that. They read each other so well. They can connect so well. And I have a script in front of me, you know, like at May Days. At May Day concerts, huge, 100 people on stage. And I'm calling in headphones, I got 18 people I'm talking to, okay? And there's a script and there's a song coming out. Okay, we're getting ready for a Puahone, okay? And then all of a sudden I see Robert go like this. I said, hold on, it's not gonna be Puahone, it's gonna be something else, because Robert senses that the audience is going to sleep. You know, Robert has a radar. He can't see them. At the Waikiki, the lights are blinding, okay? So he doesn't see them, but he can feel them. And I'm the first one before a show to go, okay, now take a left turn. Anything you guys want to do, because I've been doing it enough with him so I can read it too. When he leans behind the bass, I go, hold on everyone, something's changing, maybe. Or maybe it is, did you see Auntie Susie in the front row? You know, it may be something like that. Maybe just to be a comment and they're laugh back and forth. There has been jokes, but normally it is, get ready, we're taking a left turn.
You just told their stage secrets. So next time that happens, everyone's gonna go, oh, they're gonna change songs. Let's be ready for the next one.
That's ready, okay? And then it'll probably be a joke, you watch.
So how was the meeting though? I mean, you guys were both young, and you know, how did it get started, and how was the representation? And
it was nervous. You know, everybody was nervous, you know. We were young, and they had kind of the rug pulled out from under them and such like that. But we signed them up. We made their first 2 albums, and the irony of it all is 1 year to the day, they were back at the Prow Lounge as the Brothers Cazimero instead of Sunday Manoa. And the Prow Lounge is the Esprit today at the Sheraton, okay? So it was nervous.
did your dad help you along? Now that you're trying to do your own thing, or?
No, my dad actually produced the first album.
Okay.
And we did it together, basically. But I was watching these acts being produced by my father, from Nina to Beamers to everyone else. And then I was seeing that beyond getting a record, nothing was happening. They didn't have a job. They didn't have a manager. So I began a management team next to the record label, which was Musica Polynesia. And then slowly my father passed away from that. He's still alive. He didn't pass away, but he's still alive. In fact, he's going to be 90 next month, okay? And I can't keep up with him. He sends me a song a day in the internet. It's quite remarkable, okay?
How have you kept the relationship with the brothers Cazimero over this amount of time? Because typically, artists move and companies move and so on, but that's been decades, right?
Decades. It's been 30 years and we've done about 37 albums together. We just felt good. It took probably a year to get comfortable with each other's attitudes and our abilities and what we could do, and we just felt good together. And in those days, I was traveling everywhere with them. I was also handling one other act called Booga Booga, which was a theatrical comedy team, which was Rap Replinger, Ed Cahill, and James Grant Benton. So those two groups, I would take out on the road, go outer islands and do tours in hotels and such like that. And just Robert and Roland and I became very close. And one of their major assets today, and one of the best things in their life, is their intellectual property is all under the Mountain Apple umbrella. So they're not, with that label or that distributor or that source or anything like that. They're all together, and it's just all together and perfect. And it grew, and the trust got better, and we understood what our abilities were, okay, and such. And the three of us, each of us do something that's very different in our hui, the three of us, but it works. It works.
How did that growing pains, how was it for you? You expanded here, then you continued to add on to another thing. You said you were doing management, then producing, and so forth.
Well, I was young and feisty and eager. I just loved it. I was lapping it all up. Again, I went into this whole posture of leaving here for the first time, going to school, out of high school. And my whole posture was this new word called multimedia, And so, like doing a May Day concert is like painting with people on stage. And then I got, $200,000 worth of lights, that I can turn on and off or blend or make things happen. I can do illusions of depth, where you think they're closer and stuff like that, just with lighting, okay? So in school, you're taught that. And I didn't do really any theater training in school, but I did sculpture work and things like that. And I did three-dimensional objects, and things. So this was really something that was just real natural. Okay, I was just eager to lap it all up, and more the better. I loved it. And I went on, I had 4 or 5 groups I was managing at one time till I figured out it was babysitting. And I wasn't into the babysitting part. I wanted to do more creative. I wanted to dig for oil. I wanted to really find new talents, new things that represent Hawaii.
So when did you know that it was time to start delegating things out? Because it almost sounds like you can do just about everything on your own.
Late 1977, I incorporated Mountain Apple Company, and that's when it really started to grow fast, okay? And the record productions picked up considerably. I owned my own studio, in fact, a few of them. And we had them busy all the time, and we were making music. And it accelerated quite quickly, and the staff started to grow quickly. Early 80s, the record business in general was real soft. There was just nothing happening, and everybody was a little afraid of it, much like now, okay? Life is a waveform. If you just get used to that part of it, you'll be able to live just fine, okay? So it accelerated when Mountain Apple came along, and we got more diversified, and because we're in every aspect, publishing, we do consult. That's the new word from management, moved to consulting.
Everyone's doing consulting.
What does that mean?
Nowadays.
It means they don't have to show up at the event and carry their guitar. Now, I never did that anyway, but consulting is what I do. One of our artists will come in and say, will you come to my show and look at me and critique me afterwards? Oh, of course, love to. And I go to the show, and then we go back in the back and we talk about, some of the bad habits they get into. Because along with what I'm saying with Cazimero's at 13 years in the Royal, as well as getting their chops down as far as being able to do their craft, there was also bad habits that were picked up, okay, along the way. So someone has to spot that sometimes, and that's my job, I guess, and I'm not afraid to go up to, and especially when they're asking, help me. Show me what you think is my strong part and my weakest part, and then let's try to make things happen better. And if they're open for that, and that shows me that they have that attitude thing I was talking about earlier. They really want to do this, and they're serious about it. Otherwise, they would just have a $100 a night guitar playing job down in a corner of a saloon down in Waikiki, and then they wouldn't be calling me,
If tomorrow music was no longer an option, you could not do what you're doing today, what would you do?
Brain surgery? No. My theory is if someone hit the switch and turned music off, and they made music illegal, I believe the world would probably last 5 days and it would disintegrate. Music is something that is a fiber that goes through us all, every person. Now, there are so many types of music, and and people are in their niche. But if you took that away, if you silenced all the elevators, all the hotel lobbies, and you made it illegal, and it had to be digital black, as we would call it in the audio world, no sound at all, we would be at war. We would be a global conflict in a matter of days. That's my theory. I'm not sure if that would happen.
So if there was no music, though, for you, what would you be doing professionally or just with your time, your life?
I'd be drawing pictures on the beach with a stick in the sand. If I didn't have paint, if I didn't have something, I'd be painting. Or if we had computers, I'd be messing around with computers. I love computers and things like that.
When you came back from college, you had a gallery of all of your paintings, and you sold them for about $1,500 to $2,000, right?
Yes.
Now it's worth millions because, it's rare to find one of your paintings.
I guess.
I saw one. It's in
at
the
this
bank.
very nice party I went to last week, actually brought to you by these people that do this Greater Good television show. There was 2 people in there that I hadn't seen for quite a while that collected my work when I came back from college. And I offered to buy it back from him. And he says, not in your life. It's gone through 2 divorces. I gave up a Jaguar. I gave up 3 or 4 major cool items that I've collected, but I held on to your paintings, John. And I said, I'll buy them back for twice as much as you bought them for. I said, I only bought them for $40. This was a good friend, and he has a good collection of my paintings, and they were going for between $1,000 and $3,000. And I had built a small room that I called de Mello Gallery, which was like a theater, and it had music in it. Again, the multimedia thing, and there was a couch, and I would have a phone bay of people calling professional dentists, doctors, all the people that I thought that could afford paintings. And I would make appointments after work. It was in the Aloha building, and it was a small little room, and there was a table and a glass of wine. We'd talk about art and what kind of art. I'd do some research and kind of understood what they were after and what they were looking for. And talking about low tech, I had 4 garage door motors that I bought from Sears in the ceiling, and those clickers. And the room would go dark very slowly. That I had a rheostat on my side. I'd turn the room dark, and there'd be music playing, and I'd push one of the things, and the paintings would come down in the dark. And then I'd push another light, and the light would project a square light on the painting, and dimly it would come up, and people would gasp, at it. They would just go, where did that come from? And I had 4 paintings in the ceiling, and then I had a slide projector with a motorized screen that would come down that I could show them infinite amount of work. But the trick in that is not to confuse them. You try to qualify them in 2 or 3 works, and then you hang on them. These were 4x5, sometimes bigger, 4-by-foot paintings. And they would come literally out of the black of the ceiling. You wouldn't see it at all, and then all of a sudden this painting would materialize in front of you. And people were amazed at that. They would gasp.
You would get a kick out of their reaction.
They loved it. Oh yeah, they loved
cool.
it. It was fun.
That's almost like marketing or presentation then, right?
Yeah.
You're accentuating kind of the fine points of what you're doing.
Yes. And at this particular time in Aloha Center, there was a big gallery called Corey Gallery. And Ed Corey was, notoriously, in the art world. He had Salvador Dali's and all sorts of interesting things, which later turned out to be not quite Salvador Dali's. But he was a very interesting.
He was from
Salvador Dali. He was
Chinatown.
down the neighborhood a little ways. He was from Kalihi. Really. Yeah, really. Ed Corey heard about this and called me himself and says, I want to see this. And I said, sure, come on over. He came over and sat down, and the lights came back on after I showed him 3 works. He says, I want you to try to sell me the art. Forget that I have this big art gallery in Aloha Center. Okay, I want you to sell me your art. Do your thing for me. Okay, right. I did it. And he was quiet for about 2 minutes after the whole presentation. And then he says, I want to hire you to go to San Francisco, and I'm going to give you 3 of my best people, and I want you to build a room like this for me. And I want you to teach them how to use it, and I'll get all the tech stuff, and I'll pay you whatever you need to do it. And he was amazed. And I remember some of these things. He says, you're the kind of mind that would redesign a freeway or something that would be just revolutionary, because what I just felt, and this was one of the biggest art dealers in the world. Now, he had a reputation, but he was a big art dealer. And he was flying me to San Francisco and wanted me to reshape this whole room for him down by the wharf. He had this gallery that was going on. Unfortunately, about 30 days later, he died of a heart attack. And I never got to go to San Francisco. I never did it. But when I went over to Corey Gallery 6 or 7 months later, they had rooms, but they weren't set up like my room, and they had paintings on the wall, and they had the lady with the rheostat turning the lights up and down, really slowly dimming it because it changes the color of the painting, you know, and it's very interesting. And you have to think, see now, like in sunset, it would look like this on your room, and they were doing it, obviously, by just the communication that Corey told his employees, you know, so they were trying to get into that. You know, it's very interesting.
It's almost like telling a joke, but you don't have the timing right.
Right, exactly, right, exactly. They just didn't have the whole technique. I took everyone down to black, and there was music playing, orchestral music playing, and it was a sweep, and it was like a crescendo when the painting suddenly appeared in front of them. And because of lighting and the depth of field, some people felt like, wow, I'm right in this painting. It was only about 7 to 8 feet away from them, but you know, sometimes they would lose their bearing. They didn't know where they were. Am I in this, or is this a movie? Am I in it, or what? There were very interesting reactions, you know, very.
Was that your first business?
That was my first business. Yeah, and I did custom framing on the side. In my summer vacations in high school and stuff like that, I was an apprentice under a very exotic carpenter that did picture frames, custom picture frames. And he taught me, he pulled me into the thing, and he saw that I liked working with my hands and wood crafts and stuff like that. So he taught me picture framing to an extreme that I would have never learned by a normal picture framer. And it helped me in college because I went to an Italian in Berkeley. I needed a job. And I went to a very famous Italian art gallery there that did custom framing. And I walked in, it was, you know, Hawaiian or somebody that out of town, and they're all speaking Italian and everything. And I said, I'm a picture framer. And I saw a sign in the window saying, you need one. And they kind of go, yeah, sure, yeah, sure. You know, they kind of laugh at me, you know. I said, give me a shot, you know. Give me a tear sheet, pull me a tear sheet and show me where your shop is. They walked me downstairs, gave it to me. In 20 minutes, I came back up, and they said, I've never seen anything like this. It's fantastic. And this is in 1967, and they offered me $13 an hour, which was unheard of in those kind of days. It was more like $3.95 an hour for their other framers. Didn't get along very well with the rest of the Italian framers because I think they got wind of the kind of pay I was getting, and it was one of those things. They just saw it, and I had the ability to do it, so I worked with them for a couple of years. Nice Italian family.
What has been challenges for you that you have faced? Because it seems that you have a lot of talent here and there, business, art, creative, everything.
Well, every day there are situations that you just have to tie a solution to. Okay, and you know, I've had a number of wonderful teachers, but one specifically said that there are no problems. You know, there's situations that you just have to solve. Okay, and I sort of go into life that way, into business that way. The music business is changing fast, and it's getting pretty crazy out there, you know, from intellectual property, copyright violations and infringements and synchronization and all that kind of stuff. It's a mess right now, okay, because the big five have merged down to 2 now. So it's kind of crazy in that area. But again, I go into it with, there's got to be a solution. And one of my teachers said, the solution is piggyback on the problem. You always tend to look out on the horizon. Where is the answer to my problem? And that's not the way it happens in your body, in your brain. The solution is attached to the problem. It's right on the problem. But we tend to want to go, oh, it's got to be over there. Let me go poke around in that area over there and see if I can find it.
Do you have
a
story that actually happened and you can explain?
Not really a story, but a way I work and the way we all work. Sometimes when we're writing a document or we're writing a paper, or in my case, if I'm writing a song, I'll sit down with a fresh idea and I'll sketch it out, you know, and then for 4 days I'll run around the block looking for the song when the song was right in front of me, that first pass, you know. How many times have you written a document? You wrote it, throw it in the corner. Wrote it, throw it away. A letter, throw it away. And then all of a sudden you see this big stack down there and you try to go back to the first one, you open it up and you go, hey, that was it, you know. So we tend to second guess ourselves too many times, okay? And that's what this one teacher meant by saying that the solution is connected to the situation or the problem. Okay, and that's the most important thing, being fluid and not running around the block because you think you have to. Okay.
What about a situation where maybe you can call it a failure? Because it seems like for really successful people, they've had their fair share of failures that at the time looked like just pure terror, but later on when you're connecting the dots, it was just kind of a stepping stone.
Oh, not me. I've never had a failure. Oh, not me. I remember one of my devastating moments when I thought, curtains, it's over, okay? And it was one of the first albums I produced, and I was a little bit avant-garde in some of the musicians and some of the way I was playing some of the instruments on it, specifically a big pahu drum, a Hawaiian drum that's big, and I needed some big beats, big pounding stuff in the beginning of a song. Okay, well, this was still in the vinyl record days, and if you don't cut a record right and a loud sound like a drum hits, okay, it makes the needle jump and skip over to the next track, you know, so you hear a little glitch. Okay, so I went to Los Angeles and mastered this project and brought it all back, okayed the manufacturing and everything, and then discovered that on a normal turntable, it was jumping tracks on this one drum beat, okay? And I thought, oh my God, they'll never forgive me, I'm dead. I'm out of a job, I'm gonna have to build houses for the rest of my life. It's a good job building houses, okay? And such like that. And so I got on a plane, went back to the mastering company and toned the drum down and managed to fix it, okay? But for a moment there, I felt like it's over, okay? I blew it big time, okay? When it was just a technical little thing that just slipped by, you know? And again, the solution was a piggyback. All I had to do was go right back to the mastering company instead of going, oh my God, what's happening out there? I'm in a mess, you know? I went right back to the mastering company and we just remastered the one song actually, and cut the metal acetate disc that they make the stampers out of, you know, and such like that. It just worked out fine after all, you know.
So what's the learning lesson out of that, besides the solution piggybacking on the problem?
Don't overamp. Don't beat yourself up for no reason. There's no reason to beat yourself up. We all make errors. We all make judgment calls that are slightly askew, okay? We all do that, we're human. And there's beauty to imperfection, because that teaches you a lot. And I think really that's the final say is, we overamp. We're too dramatic about things, especially when you're in the arts. You're just too dramatic about things sometimes. A lot of times, the incubation of an idea, the first time it comes out of your mouth or gets scribbled down on a piece of paper, that is your business model. And if you crumble that up and toss it over your shoulder and say, I gotta figure out a business model, you're crazy. Okay, because that really was. It's the pureness. We're God beings. We were put here to make and create. Okay, we know how to create. Okay, and everyone does. The God that made us, or the Spirit that made us, gave us that ability to create. Okay, and whenever we're doing that, I feel it's God. It's God working through all us individually. When you have a family and you create kids, that's the greatest of gods right there. That's the greatest of unions. And you get to watch this little creature grow up that looks like you, makes you crazy, okay? That's creation in its highest, okay? And it's God working through us, okay? Now drawing a picture, scrabbling something on a piece of paper, writing a dissertation, writing a novel, all of that, that's real God flowing through you. You know, and we're all prone and we're all designed to do that. Some people don't understand that. Some people would rather just stay home and sit and eat potato chips and watch television. But that's what makes the world go round. There's different types of personalities and different types of energies, and they all mingle.
When in your career did you start giving back to the community, getting involved, using your business to make a difference?
Early. I realized that there had to be a sense of community. We're a tribe. You know, we're a giant tribe now. The whole world is one tribe, you know. And on the internet, as we start to see these other cultures, we're starting to see how close they are to us. They may call red a different color, or it may be something different to them, or they may be able to say things that we can't say, or whatever, okay? But there's a sense of community. There's a sense of camaraderie that has to be. And in the arts, it's very strong, prevalent, and it's right there. So before I was 30, I was giving lots back to the community. I thought. Now, maybe some people don't, but I do.
What were you doing?
Concerts. Somebody needed a concert. Somebody needed entertainment. Somebody needed a stage design. Somebody had a silent auction and they want something. I would give some of my paintings away. I would give some music away. you know. We still, in fact, today we got a call from a very worthy cause, and we donated 200 CDs to them. Giveaways for the people that are there, and they also wanted to have a silent auction on some of them. So the community is very important. We learn from each other much more than we learned in school. We learn by living and by example. And it's a very important thing. And we are a tribe. We are here. We're living together, even though it's more difficult now than the 60s, you know, and with certain kinds of abuses that are out there, from the internet to drugs to alcohol to anything else, you know. It's difficult, but we all still should be trying to help each other. It's a community, and if you've done any kind of extensive traveling, this word called Aloha, that we kind of chuckle at, thinking that, you know, some ad guy made it up in the 30s, okay, you know, but the Aloha spirit, it is real, okay, it is real. It's amazing if, you know, you're in Paris and you're walking down a walkway and you stop to let somebody go by, they're kind of shocked at you, okay, but that's Aloha spirit. Oh, come on, come on. Or you're in line and all of a sudden you see there's a little lady with a big box behind you. Come up here and get them in front of here and you can pay for it now, you know. That's Aloha spirit. And that's something that we grew up and we ate as children growing up in Hawaii. And that, I think, needs to be spread more and more.
You know, the giving back to the community, did somebody just ask you for something or your services or a product, or did somebody tell you, you know, Jon, you need to start getting involved in the community, or was it just a feeling?
Both. This business hui that I got, they were very community conscious, so I suddenly was aware of what was happening there, that, you know, we were together. So both. People would ask for my services, people would ask for donations, people would ask for all sorts of different things. But also I saw, too, that if I gave just a little something over there, it grew and came back at me 100-fold. And that wasn't the object of the drill. It was just doing something good for someone in the community, or good for somebody, being polite. It comes back at you. It's a good deed and it comes back 10 times, usually, okay? And one of my teachers taught me that too. That's very important. Just, you know, be pleasant. This one lady used to say, you should be pleasant all the time. I went, oh, come on.
That's difficult.
That'll wreck my reputation.
So what about the Nature Conservancy project that you worked on? I know that had some business benefits also, but that's kind of ancillary. Can you maybe share your experience on that?
The Nature Conservancy had a 100th-year birthday, okay, and they'd been in Hawaii for 100 years. And the director and the president approached me, and they said, we want to do a CD. We want to do, you know, 8 or 10 songs, you know, that have to do with the islands and stuff like that. And considering I've had that comment presented to me 1,000,000 times, and I've done 1,000,000 of them, I turned it around after just a few minutes and said, why don't we do a DVD with pictures and audio and showing some of the things that you folks represent, the birds that no longer exist, or there's only 2 of these specific birds in the whole world, and they know where they are in Molokai, in this reserve, you know. And I said, I know we can send out letters to all the cinematographers, the photographers, the musicians, all these people. I know we can send a letter to them from Mountain Apple Company and from the Conservancy saying, will you donate your goods? And we're going to make a DVD. We're going to make 20,000 of them, and we are going to give them away. We will never sell it. We are going to give them away to whoever asks, has one. And it took only 20 minutes for them to say, never thought of a DVD, that sounds great, you know. And when we sent out our letters, we got just a multitude of talents and people that said, yes, you can use all of this, and boxes were showing up. Here's film, here's this, here's slides, here's the pictures of all the birds. In fact, one lady says, I have audio. The museum had audio of the birds, you know, that were extinct, that were chirping. And so you could hear their sing, and they would announce the birds. So then I got together with a videographer and myself, and we edited this whole thing together, and we made 20,000 of them. They went out in about a month and a half, and they ordered, I think, another 10,000, and those are all gone too. And that was a community service, and that was a 2.5-year job. You know, that took 2.5 years to put together, edit, and get it the way we all wanted it. It was both informative, it was educational, the graphics were beautiful, and the pictures were wonderful, and it was history, and it was music. It had song beds. It had 6 songs in it that would go from scene to scene, and they'd talk about the forests, the oceans, and they'd talk about all the elements. It was exactly what the Nature Conservancy is all about. So they were tickled that there was a new concept out there. And I've been over to people's houses, and I sort of go over and I nose around in their DVD collection, and it's sitting right there. And I asked them about it, and they said, yeah, every now and then we put that on, like on Saturdays when we're just walking around and stuff like that. Because there's a narrative in some cases, there's a scroll with reading in some cases, and then there's music. You can listen to the music and you can just drift away with it, you know? It's scenes of like very sacred spots on all of the islands, including some of the Northwest Islands. And it was just a fun project to do. And some really neat people that believed in my talents. And I knew that they were on the right track. It was a really nice relationship.
Now, I know that you don't necessarily do these things because it's going to have some kind of business effect, but 20,000 DVDs, 2.5 years is a substantial amount of time and resources. Did you see anything coming back maybe in a roundabout way at all? Or?
No. I really don't think of that, you know. It does happen, like I said, you know, you do one good deed and you're bound to get 5 back, okay? But that's just the universal law in action, okay? I must have put 2,000 hours in this project, you know, of my personal time at home, in my studio, editing, doing all sorts of different things. It was for the community. It was because the shoe fit perfectly. I mean, you know, like, you know, you're the Nature Conservancy, well, it can't just be 6 songs. It's got to be nature. You know, Apua, we've got to explain the concept in the Kapu system of when you had lands, it was from the ocean all the way up to the highest peak, and it was a slice, and that's what they had. We have to show them what that meant in the old days, you know, and stuff like that. So it was a labor of love, you know, but it was also hard work.
What would you say is your greatest life accomplishment?
I don't think I've done it yet. The worst question anybody can ask me is, what are you working on now? What groups are you doing? And I'm stupefied because I'm doing like 6 or 7 at a time, and I'm like, what's the hit this week? I don't know, okay? I'm very proud of getting the first gold and platinum record for Hawaii with Israel Kamakawiwoʻole. That is a major accomplishment for our island community, okay? Because now we're suddenly in the big league. No one ever got close to that before. You know, and that has made it spark into a world community and made Hawaii more of an interesting location, so to speak, from a business standpoint, not just as a, you know, vacation site. Because right now we have 2 hit songs in the top 10 in 17 countries around the world. And it's Hawaiian music, you know. And then on the other side of the coin, which is very interesting, going back to Israel for a second, the man, not the country, I was out at the Kahala Spa and Sports and Spa Hotel now. The Kahala Hilton Mandarin, what was it all? It was now it's the Kahala Sport and whatever. I was having dinner with my daughter, my 21-year-old daughter, who is following me into the company, and there may be 3 generations of this happening. It's kind of exciting. We're sitting there having dinner in this big round table full of family, mother and father, and they got a couple of high chairs, and then they got all the way up to like a 16 or 17-year-old. You know, it's a table of 10. It's a family. We're sitting right next to it, okay? At the Kahala at night, they have 3 musicians that wander around, you know. And Keelan and I were talking, and we saw the musicians go over to the table, and they positioned themselves across from us, and they say, what is your favorite song? Can we play your favorite Hawaiian song? And the mother says, can you play Somewhere Over the Rainbow by Israel Kamakawiwoʻole? That's my favorite Hawaiian song, you know? And I'm looking at my daughter, Kamokila, and she's looking at me, and I'm looking over there, and they start right into it, and everybody at the table is just stopped and grinning from ear to ear, you know? And it's like, you know, a song from Wizard of Oz now suddenly is their favorite Hawaiian song of all time, you know? So it's neat. I don't think I've done my best work yet. I still think there are a number of monumental events that I'm trying to accomplish that are long productions and big things, but I don't think that I've really done my best work yet.
You know, speaking of Brother Is, because everybody loves him and knows his name, are you able to share your favorite memory that you shared with him?
Yeah, 3 or 4 times a year he would end up in the hospital. Now, to that is like we're trembling in our shoes, okay? That to him was the Four Seasons Hotel. You know, he would check in and they'd take care of him. He'd, you know, food, everything, it was right there. Now, Israel did die at 1,000 pounds. This was 10 years ago, next year. This was towards the end of his life, and so he was in his bed. I was sitting at his feet, and I'm not comfortable in a meeting when I can't see someone's face. And Israel was back like this, He wanted to talk about some things, and I wanted to talk about some things, and there was no contact. I was looking at his feet, he was looking at the ceiling, okay? So I realized this after about 5 minutes, and I said, Israel, move over. I climbed up in bed with him and pushed myself right up so our heads were right on the pillow, okay? My feet probably stopped at his waist, okay? And at least we were looking at the ceiling together, and we could talk, and then every now and then go like this, and we could see each other. Okay, and I think that was one of the coolest events, because when the nurses walked in and saw this, they would just go, "What's happening?" But it was Israel, and
it's a special moment.
That was a special moment. I had a lot of special moments with Israel. He was the first one to call me in the morning with a joke and wake me up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he was the last one to call me at night. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. He's the first one ever to call me at 2:30 in the morning, sobbing uncontrollably, thanking me for what I had done for his life. And within 30 seconds, we were both just a mess on the phone, going, no, it was you. No, it was you, Bob.
We do that all the time, too, with each other.
Mostly just crying.
That's it. And he's really the first artist that has just, on the phone, called me up and said, I had to call you and say, you've done so much for me. Thank you so much. I just appreciate, you teach me how to write, you teach me how to play, you show me my music, and you're my best support team. He used to call me his cheerleader and stuff like that. I couldn't go back to sleep. I was sobbing after 30 seconds, going, no, but it's your music that they want. It's not me, And there were some great moments with that man, okay? And obviously, it shows in his music, okay? Now, he's one of those people that he was a simple player. He didn't play, fancy things. He played ukulele very simply. He had the chord structures basically down, and he sang, okay? So there's the aptitude part. Small, but he had this enormous attitude towards success and taking care of his Hawaiian people. Okay, that's the proof of the pudding. The aptitude and the attitude, the balance between those two. He had much more attitude than he had aptitude, the ability to play his stuff, but yet it speaks right to your heart when Israel sings to you now.
What would you say has been your favorite childhood moment?
I grew up in Waikiki, and my first 10 years were in Waikiki when it was still a beach town. And I was taken in by all the old-time beach boys, and after school I would go down to the beach, and I had a little uniform, the whole thing. I was like their mascot. I was 8 years old. Some of the coolest things I remember at those periods of time were like some of these super beach boys, Splash, teaching me how to steer a canoe, when I was 10 years old. On wave surfing, steer a canoe. I'd be sitting right in front of him, and he'd be steering, but then he'd switch. When a wave was something I could handle, he'd switch, and he'd teach me how to do it, and he'd blade it. And some of the old timers, they taught me those kind of things. Also, being around Kamakawiwoʻole Campbell, she was my godmother, and Lani Kohonua was her house, and that's where she lived. And it was before the freeways. We used to take a half day to drive out there, go just turn left right into the cane field, and I don't know, somewhere all of a sudden this little Shangri-La happened. It was just her house. So those moments in my life I cherish. They were beautiful times. And she had a piano. She used to tell stories. She'd put her glasses down on her nose and tell us kids stories, ghost stories, Hawaiian legends at night, at Lani Kohonua. And I was out there about 5 months ago, and I went over. I know where the house site was, and I know where everything. It's just a big lawn. They rent out for weddings and things now and such. And I walked out and turned around and looked at the large hotel, and I went, Kamakawiwoʻole, you would appreciate this, even though it was, it's like space. It's like a frontier to her. But some of the people I was around when I was young were just magical.
If there was one message that you could give our viewers and listeners today from this entire discussion, what would that message be?
Attitude. Take it on. Be positive. Give yourself to everyone. Protect yourself with a bubble. You don't want to buy debts. If you walk up to a street person and he's asking with a cup for change, if you put change in that cup, you're really buying his debt, whatever that debt is. You could do something better for him, Attitude is all of it. Attitude, and you've got to learn skills. You've got to know how to do skillful things, but your attitude going into anything you do has to be positive and focused and for the right reason.
Would you consider yourself lucky?
I consider myself a lucky person, and I pass that on quite a bit. Whenever I see somebody, I always say, hello, lucky person. And I think luck is timing, luck is a little bit of your self-made stuff, but I am a lucky person, especially because I live in Hawaii, you know, for over 100 years. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to launch out of the world.
What kind of advice are you giving your daughter, and what kind of advice could you give to our viewers out there in regards to reaching success, although success is defined by each person?
You've got to follow your own path. You've got to make your own way. You've got to sense you have the DNA. She is so much like my father, and witty, fast, her humor, her everything. And my main advice to her always is you got to just be yourself. School is very important. She's in school, she's learning a lot, and she's learning a lot from her teachers and her fellow students. But she's in Mountain Apple Company every day, and she's learning about publishing, she's learning about intellectual properties. I asked her when she was very young, she was about 14, I said, you know what IP is? Intellectual property? I didn't say intellectual property, I just said IP. And she paused for a minute and she says, interesting Portuguese? So I promote her being herself. I don't think in my whole life I've ever said, you can't do this. Pow, out. I've always had a comment. You know, if she wants to do something that is a little out of my, you know, comfort zone, I ask her, I say, well, you know, there are some consequences. If you want to comment, and sometimes she says yes, sometimes no. You know, a comment is, well, this could backfire on you, you know, this could be a real problem in the end, you know, you understand that, and yeah, okay, then you're on, you know. But I don't think I've ever said, you can't do this. What I really said is, you can do anything. Right now she's got her eyes set on going to school in Europe, and either in Paris or in London. And I'm saying, I love it. It's beautiful, okay? It's a fantastic idea. Let's make it happen. You can. She can, by herself, make it happen. I can help her and make it happen with her. That's really what it's all about. You
mentioned that you believe your formal education is when the hui took you in and, you know, really got you involved in their business ventures. Would you say street smarts or book smarts or being in the classroom?
Street smarts, okay? It takes all the books, it takes all the schooling, and it takes everything to get it down. But in the end, it's got to be street smarts, okay? I came out of my school, even the music part of it and the art part, both parts, with a kind of, no, you're not supposed to make money at this. This is the art, okay? You're not supposed, because first day in school, and you know, they said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be rich and famous and be a famous musician. You know, some guy holds his hand up and, you know, everybody goes, boo, you know, because they teach us not to do that in school. It's academia. It's just normal. You've got to have the books, but you've got to then be able to turn those book knowledge and all the other knowledge you've gained with people and whatnot and apply it to yourself and your life. And that's the trick of it all.
Well, thank you so much, Jon, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.